dialogue institutions and many that we should be engaging on. South Africa is known for engaging in social dialogue, especially when there are deep, deep troubles. In 2009, when they just post the economic meltdown, we come together with the captain of industry and government at a very, very senior level to find some solutions, which we did in terms of what needed to be done. Will always not be found wanting in terms of the ideas. But what we failed to do was to take forward those ideas, and I want to make one example. In the South African response to the global economic crisis, what we developed there is issue that needed to be taken. As soon as we finalize that agreement, the ILO take it over and said, this is what South Africans are thinking of. Can we convert that kind of thinking? They developed to what is called the jobs pact globally, accepted by many countries, and to say the way that South Africans have identified the problem and the response we need to take forward. But we go back to the ladder, and I think we make two observations which were not lasting. We said our fundamentals are in place, and therefore we should not be doing anything. We thought that we're a little bit immune from this particular crisis. By the time we wake it up, it was too late in dealing with this particular issue. That's the first point I want to make. But coming back to the crisis, because sometimes when I don't want to defend the question of who's not wrong in terms of those things. I think all of us might have made a contribution, and it's up to the other stakeholders to make a critique in terms of what Labour did in relation to those issues. But how do you criticize trade unions when the active workforce of 15 million, 50% of them earn less than 4,000 rand? Yeah. How can you go out and say the demands of the trade union are so huge when about 8 million of working people are poor, when they spend about between 25 to 45% on the transport in relation to those issues? So in order to able to convince the trade unions that their demands are extraordinary, you should be able to answer these questions. 9 million of people unemployed, about 40% if you get the broader definition, is a crisis. I mean, it's a population of Namibia, Lesotho, Botswana, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, brought together. And if you can take all those people and say, this population of this country live in South Africa, they are unemployed, socially unstable, politically unsustainable. And when we're engaging, we said, if these people can just decide one day that they will not accept to sleep without food and start to grab, what will happen? Who's going to stop it? We can bring our army, it will not be able to do it. So we live in their mercy in regard to these issues. But also frightening is that the tax revenue is shrinking. And it's shrinking very fast unless we were able to deal with those issues. The problem, of course, is that there's a lack of trust, talking between business and trade union. There's a lack of trust because we are a country that's producing millionaires. If you want to make money, many of the people who say South Africa in the last 5 years has been producing millionaires more than any other country in the world. Whether that's specific or correct, but we can look at it. So in order to answer your question, can we have a social compact? It's very difficult. It's very difficult for the poor because in a social compact, you have to make compromise. So what do you want somebody who's earning 3.5 to compromise with? What you will compromise with? And sometimes the people who talk about this particular issue, they themselves, they say, I can't live with 3.5. I can't. They say so.
True,
I mean, it's equal to sometimes your monthly petrol allowance. You expect somebody to live on it. So we have to address those particular issues. What is interesting, though, for us is that the social dialogue has been directed by human resource managers, people who cannot take decisions. What is promising now is that CEOs of companies and directors started to say, this needs us. We need to be engaging at the top level. The meeting we had over the weekend, it was almost executive directors from all the sectors of the economy, agreeing sometimes for the first time that it's not about the rigidity of our labor market. But they've been silenced when the IMF and other people have been saying, no, we can't do A, B, C. If it was that rigid, we'll not have CCMA and people being dismissed every day. Of course, for small employer that must employ maybe 10, it becomes a burden to go to the CCMA in the question of who then manage your factory. But that's why we have to have employers association dealing and taking care of those particular issues. But there is a promise in our view. That's why we're engaging. We can find something, learning from other countries as what needed to be done in dealing with those issues. The third issue for me is the shifting of goalposts from business. Unfortunately, they're not here. When there were retrenchment due to the blackout was the issue of energy. But when the energy was being restored, then there's another problem. So it keeps going on, kicking the can down the road to be able to retrench. We heard that Anglo Gold is going to be retrenching about 8.5. And if you do the multiplier factor, it's about many people, it's about 35,000 mouths that will be without food in relation to those issues. So when a crisis, the negative of it is that because we've been too deep in a crisis matters not now. So you can tell people in a crisis, they will hear you for 2 minutes, they will take it as normal, that it's going to come and pass by. But I think we can talk about the many others. The willingness from us is that we are prepared to learn some of those issues. We want to put them on trial. We don't not just want to defend it. If people are saying, if you put the economic free zones, the EPZ, they are going to, the process zone, they are going to create jobs. We said, let's do it and see it. We said the NDP is not going to work. People say, no, COSATU, you are just ultra-left. The target of 2020 to reduce the unemployment by half proves not to be reachable. It is not going to happen. We're left with 2 years. Instead of the unemployment going down, is increasing, and increasing rapidly in terms of those particular issues. There are a number of government policies that lack leadership in our view, because I think government ministers, they've compartmentalized their views. Minister of Agriculture just look at agriculture, does not look beyond agriculture. It's become untouchable in relation to those particular issues. But we are open to views, we are prepared to engage, and we are prepared to listen.
It should sink in our minds that we are in deep crisis. Stability is under threat, and the elephant in the room, of course, is that the political arrangement that we have currently in the country suffers deep institutional decay, and the questions over whether it has the capabilities to take us, to lead us out of crisis, and whether indeed there is any political agency that is prepared, is ready to take us from where we are to a better territory. So this is we are in the middle of a crisis. Business has not come to the party. The questions are being asked about business commitment to transformation. You talk to CEOs of companies, and they tell you that South Africa is transformed because the JSE has the PIC as a single shareholder, a very, an embarrassing case to make, because it's false to point to pension funds as a representative of transformation. The many proposals that I've seen from business are half-hearted. CEO initiatives do not work. They are a farce most of the time. Business becomes active at a moment of crisis when there's going to be a downgrade. Business and government work when the two have to go to WEF, or before the finance minister delivers his budget vote. There are multiple tensions between labor and business, between government and business, as well as between government and society in the rise of public service delivery protests. So we are really facing a crisis, and I hope our panelists will give us answers when we go home in 30 minutes' time. I open the floor to questions and comments.